Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Girls Like Hoops podcast. I'm Tori. I hope you guys are having a great week. If you're a new listener, hi, welcome. If you're a returning listener, hi, and thank you for your patience. God bless you, honestly. I know what you're thinking, Tori, where the hell have you been? Like, you just be disappearing. I'm so much more reliable. If this is your first time seeing me during this college season type vibe, I'm reliable. I'm reliable during the WNBA season. I want that to be known. Like, I actually do. The episodes come out a little bit later during the WNBA season because I'm usually like watching the games. Like I watch every single game. I get the stats together and like sometimes like I'll get the stats together and it's like 3 or 4 a.m. and I'm like, I have to go to sleep. Like I can't record tonight. It was so much easier to do this podcast when I was unemployed. Thank God I'm not unemployed anymore, but you know. But yeah, we are going to talk about, obviously, we're going to talk about the Final Four games and then we're going to talk about the game from Sunday, which amazing basketball throughout those matchups for me. I watched a couple of games here and there leading up to it, but I wasn't really locked in. But that's not really my thing anyways. Like there's so much, I've said this before, but like there's just so much to keep up with when it comes to college basketball. I couldn't make it happen this year. Maybe we'll try again next year. Regardless, I am more reliable during the WNBA season. I did want that to be known. Secondly, before we get into the basketball of it, okay, I will say I have another podcast that's not as popular as this one. It's called In Distress, and I talk about like life and stuff and pop culture sometimes and really just whatever I want to talk about over there. Just be happy. But if you're interested, my birthday's coming up this Saturday, and so every year I always like reflect on, you know, my previous years and kind of, you know, just I guess reflect and really like show gratitude for everything that I've learned and done this year or in that past year. And, you know, not necessarily talking about like what I hope for the future, but I just, you know, kind of just talk about life and where I'm at. And then it's kind of just like a time capsule type thing for me. But if you are interested and want to check that out, feel free to go do that. If you want to get me, that would be a great birthday gift. You know, my community here, you know, going to check out or support something else of mine would be really cool. No pressure though, but you don't have to. But it'd be really cool if you did, but you don't have to though. Anyways, but yeah, thirdly, like and subscribe, get in the comments, share your opinions, thoughts on things. We're going to talk a little bit about the New York Liberty, just a touch. And then, you know, we'll talk about some other things. I do kind of want to talk about Golden State Warriors right now a little bit later because I don't want to do too much. Like, I know we're talking about women's basketball, but like, I'm still just a girl who likes hoops. Like, I just enjoy being able to just watch basketball on most levels. So yeah, we can talk about that a little. And then obviously we're going to be starting off with college and everything. So yeah, I will start by saying I've had UConn winning the entire season. Even before the season started, I was like, I think the stars are just going to fall into place. Like the stars are going to align and UConn's going to be winning this championship. Like it's going to be a big deal. Like, you know, Paige got to leave here with this ring. And to me, all season, it's given that that's what she was going to do. You know, I've had so many conversations on TikTok Live with another women's basketball creator. And since the beginning of the season, I've been said UConn. I don't watch every single game, but like I keep tabs on everything. Like my For You page on TikTok is just women's basketball, college, WNBA, just stuff like that. My Twitter for this podcast is always filled with different people's opinions about women's college basketball or just women's basketball in general. And so, you know, I kind of like know people's names. I kind of know what people's overall opinions are in the conversations that are happening within college basketball. But like, I don't necessarily like, I couldn't tell you, oh, my favorite player to watch is this person. Like, I don't watch that often to know that. I know the names. I know theoretically what's going on. I know some of the storylines and things like that, but outside of that, I'm not really like, you know, I know stat lines for like, oh, whatever game came on that day, but like, I don't know too deep in depth. And I wanted to come on here and make a bracket, and I was really locked in on that idea. But then I was looking at them and I was like, girl, you don't know anything about any of these teams. Like, we had to be serious with ourselves. Let's not do that. So then I didn't. And then I was like, let's just let it play out. And then as we get closer to the end, we'll see how I feel about coming on and making an episode. So we'll start firstly with the first Final Four game that came on, was it Friday? It was Friday, I think. Or was it Saturday? It was Saturday, maybe. I don't remember. It was definitely Friday, actually. So first game we're going to talk about is Texas versus South Carolina. I will say when I turn the TV on, before I even turn the TV on, really, my overall thoughts as somebody who is a casual fan of college basketball, I had been hearing things about Texas all season. People in the lives I'm in, and even just like on Twitter, on TikTok, it's just a lot of people were kind of like, I don't know if Texas really, if they're really proven to be this great team that people say they are, right? And you can arguably say that about UCLA as well. People are all throughout the team, people kind of question those two being top teams or teams that would be, extremely tough to beat. And so to go into this weekend and watching the Final Four and then watching the national championship, I don't not agree with any of those things. To me, I think what I will say about UConn and South Carolina as a whole, before I really get into the Texas versus South Carolina game, I feel like when I watched South Carolina play against Texas, I saw them playing with that joy, right? So, you see Bree Hall, she tripped and fell. She's laughing. She's giggling it off. Like, it felt like the teams, like, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, their synergy, it was just there. Like, they were having a good time. And I think, to me, what has been so important, or what is so important about basketball and what I personally enjoy about it, which is why it's hard for me to like enjoy watching every single team play, even though I just love basketball, is that like you can really tell when players are having a good time, like when they're playing with joy. And on Friday night, that's what I felt when I watched South Carolina playing Texas. That's what I felt when I watched UConn playing UCLA. And even that's what I felt towards the end of the UConn versus South Carolina game. And I think with both of those teams, and what made that championship game so great is that for a fact the culture behind those teams is that they work hard, they put in the work. And not to say that anybody else doesn't, but I think that this is kind of like that difference maker for the two of these teams in particular, is that like they go in there and they put in the work. And it, to a certain extent, it's kind of like you can only do so much to prepare for like that moment of playing in a championship game, or to win it all, or to be, at the peak of something. Like you can only do so much. And then at a certain point, you kind of just have to go out there and just believe that you've done everything you need to do to prepare you for that moment. And then whatever happens, happens. And I think for me, that's what it felt like watching both of those teams play those respective games on Friday. And then on Sunday, that's what it felt like watching UConn. But even arguably, you could say that UConn had just been miles ahead of every single team that played in March Madness. Like every single team, for the most part, there were definitely like, those moments where it's like, this person clicked at the right time. Like everything, it to me, it just felt like everything fell into place, and it was just UConn's time. Obviously I think South Carolina has the potential to build like this amazing dynasty, and they've already essentially done that. Now it's just about being able to collect all of those wins and collect all of those championships. And so they're definitely on their way to being in that same level as UConn, and there's no question about that. But anyways, to get back into the Texas versus South Carolina game, when I started tuning in with my friend, I saw that Booker had picked up that third foul on Tessa Johnson, and the announcers were like, "Oh, this is bad. This is terrible for them," And so at that point, I'm kind of like, let's see what happens from here. Even before then, it wasn't looking like, to me, like just from the eye test alone, I'm not really an eye test person per se, but I do think that being able to kind of like watch a team play. And again, I will say that teams definitely do just have like, sometimes you just have bad games, like sometimes just not your day. Shots aren't falling, like, other team is just getting the best of you. And that could have very well have been like what this was. It's just Texas was just even struggling to get the ball up the court. Like, it's things like that. I don't even know. Actually, Texas didn't struggle to get the ball up the court. I think Texas was just from the eye test for me, I didn't see the vision. I don't know. It just felt like they didn't really have an answer to anything that South Carolina was throwing at them. Like, I mean, the score being 74-57 is kind of telling in itself. But like that third quarter, South Carolina had 20 points. They had 9. Like, it's things like that. Like you can't get beat. You can't get beat in that fashion in a quarter, And I think a lot of people kind of pointed out that South Carolina has some rougher starts to their games, which you could see and you could tell that from the beginning of this game, just because it was kind of close at the beginning. And then, they started getting that separation towards the end of the second, and then definitely in the third quarter. And then by the fourth quarter, it was just a cakewalk. We were just going through the motions. And so then, like you have Tessa Johnson giving you 9 points. Joyce Edwards had an amazing game. And then, you get what you need from some other pieces on the bench. But, it wasn't even, to me, Texas didn't really even look, I don't know. They just didn't look like they were really together on this one. And so I think that's kind of why they lost that game. I did not watch too many of their games throughout the season, so it's really tough for me to sit here and be like, this is exactly what they did wrong. They needed more from so-and-so and so-and-so. But just like from just watching them in this game, it didn't, I don't really even know, there wasn't a bunch to capitalize on. Like, I think the shooting was pretty bad. Yeah. They couldn't get any threes going, like 22 of 56 from the field. It just, you need more, and that's okay. And even just looking at the stats, like shooting 39% from the field, shooting 40% from 3 versus 63%. It's just things like that, getting beat on the boards. South Carolina, I think they share the ball a little bit better. Again, Joyce Edwards had an amazing game. Like her court vision, her perimeter defense. I think there was one point when she went to defend somebody on the perimeter and, she affected their shot. And it's just things like that, like your bigs being able to play up and things like that. And I think maybe Texas just didn't have it wasn't their day. I don't really know what the vibe was there, but to me, I was not buying what Texas was selling in that moment. But they made it that far, so they must be pretty decent. Hopefully, things work out for them next year maybe, and they're able to do something, but South Carolina got the best of them on this one. Next up, we have UConn versus UCLA. This is a very interesting game. Again, I'm going into this like people are saying UCLA is good, and I'm ready to see it's about to be a battle, and it was not that. Texas versus South Carolina, it didn't really feel like it was anything crazy, and so I was like, UConn versus UCLA, I've been hearing about them all year, like let's see what it is. And then to turn the game on and to see people not rise to the occasion, it was crazy. I won't lie, it shocked me. I do have to give it to Lauren Betts for her 26 points. Just nobody else showed up that day. Nobody else showed up that day. And again, you just have to attribute that to UConn picking people up full court. Like that defense, like it was just, and UConn did that throughout the entirety of like the South Carolina game pretty much as well. They just didn't let UCLA get comfortable at all. They didn't really let them set anything up. Like getting picked up full court on almost every single possession is, there's only so much that you can do. And, Caitlin Chin played amazing. She played really great this game, actually. UConn's ball movement was really great. Everybody getting a touch. At the beginning, I think Paige really was struggling a little bit on offense. And then, as the game went on, she was able to really, get her shot going. Honestly, her movement on the court, amazing. I think her and Azzi, again, like that constant movement is really always gonna like make for great basketball plays. Their transition offense was also just top tier. There weren't many things that I felt like UConn. To me, it kind of felt like throughout this game and then the next game as well. And I'm sure if you watched the games like leading up to it, it just felt really easy for them. Like it felt like I was watching extremely ethical basketball. They just played the right way. You know, they believed in each other. And even early on in the season, that was a really big point of contention for a lot of people. They were kind of like, Paige, you know, she needs to keep the ball. She needs to be aggressive. And it's not even really that she is passive per se, but I think this was a very important lesson for many players in college basketball and even just like in general, like as watchers, how important it is to instill confidence and to have trust and faith in your teammates. Because if Paige didn't give up shots throughout the season, if she just felt the need to take over games every single game, you don't end up winning, you know, this game versus UCLA. I don't know if you end up winning the game versus South Carolina, because that trust that she had in her teammates is the reason that they got this championship. Like, basketball is a team sport, yes, and I think at the same time that you do want to see Paige like be amazing and you want to see her take over games because she's capable of doing that, I think it takes a real leader to be able to take a step back and be like, I don't need to take the game over. I want us to win, and I believe that we can. And the best way to do that is by me giving up this shot, or giving up a good shot for a great shot, or an amazing shot. And constantly doing that throughout the season like led them to the moment that they're at right now. It leads to Sarah Strong being able to play amazing as a freshman and to have a huge role in this championship. And she's going to be an amazing player to watch as, you know, the years go on. But without Paige being that type of leader who has faith and trusts her teammates, like, you don't end up with this win. And she just did amazing. Everybody rose to the occasion. And then, you know, for UConn, they're picking people up full court. You know, they're not letting teams get comfortable. And I think that was like a very big part of why they won this game, and also why they won their game against South Carolina. Amazing ball movement, making sure everybody gets touches, you know, giving up good shots for great shots. Their transition offense, amazing. I know I'm saying full court defense. Picking somebody up full court for most of the game is always going to be tough for the ball handler. But even just UConn's defense in general, like it's not often that a defense looks as good as UConn's did. And it's like, even when I watch like teams play in the NBA and even sometimes in the WNBA as well, like, I don't think people don't really understand like defense and how you react to switches, and all of that stuff is just so important on every possession. Like, and you can tell that UConn doesn't take possessions off either. You know, they don't just win games, you know, they make sure you remember that they won as well. And they play basketball the right way for the entirety of the game as well. So, you know, this night, Azzi had a good night. I think she had 19 points. Sarah Strong had 22 points, 8 rebounds at the beginning. I think Paige struggled a little at the beginning in that first quarter, but then, you know, her shot started falling. And even just watching Paige play, like, her movement on the court, it's hard to explain. I think, obviously, like, you don't win this game without having trust and instilling that faith and confidence in players like Sarah, in players like Jana or KK, Ice Brady. You know, people have like, and these are like players that, you know, throughout the season, people have kind of like, you know, been a little rough on Ice Brady. Like, and to see like both of those players really show up when they needed them the most and, get out there and play hard. Amazing. And again, you just don't win without them. And I think something else that really just separated them from UCLA and then also just from South Carolina, I think they just had a speed advantage. They were very well conditioned. Like, those players, they were not tired. Like, they were out there to do what they needed to do. You can't execute your transition offense and you can't pick somebody up full court if you're not conditioned well. And they just tired them out, honestly. Like, and to me, that's really just what this came down to, because even at the end or like during halftime, I was kind of like, okay, maybe UCLA might try to come back. And they just looked tired. Like, they looked like they didn't have enough in them. They didn't have enough in the tank. And, nobody else really showed up with Lauren Betts. And maybe things will be different in the future. I mean, maybe they bring some new pieces in. But that was a tough way to go out for UCLA. But again, I just think UConn was just the most talented team there in that matchup. And, they got the job done. So next up, we have UConn versus South Carolina. This was a very great game. I think it was definitely different than I expected. I didn't really expect it to be like a blowout game or anything. And so the fact that it was very interesting. I've never really seen Dawn that upset. I think I'm usually used to her, just like on the sidelines. And so when she sat down, maybe before halftime or like in the second quarter, I was kind of like, dang, this is a different type of ass beating for real, which is crazy. Cause I don't think a lot of people were expecting that. I had made a video right after the UConn versus UCLA game. And I was like, if it's not obvious to anybody, like, I'm like, UConn's winning this championship. Like, it's very obvious. It's very clear to me. And some people in the comments were like, well, I don't know what y'all gonna do about post play. Y'all don't really have people to do that. And I had a lot of people telling me, no, like, South Carolina got it. And I'm not gonna do too much on y'all because y'all was just supporting and rooting for your team. I'm gonna let y'all have that. But to me, it was very obvious. To me, that UCLA game was very close to almost a flawless game. And so to see them playing next to South Carolina, doing the same thing, intense defense. Caitlin Chen did amazing. She had a really great game against UCLA. And then, this game, she was a little bit quieter, but again, she's a great facilitator. She's a great defender, and I hope to see her drafted in the WNBA draft this year. But they just did everything that they've been doing, trusting each other, giving up good shots for great shots, ball movement. Everybody gets touches. Sarah in the paint, blocking, steals, rebounding. She did amazing. Azzi had a great game, and it wasn't just shooting, she was attacking, getting in the paint. I think there's just really something to be said about those two having that level of confidence, and even just Sarah not even looking like a freshman. Sarah looked like she had been there before, and all of that coming together the way that it needed to, Paige giving up shots, not forcing it. A testament to her as a leader, being able to take that step back and be like, I don't need the big stat line. I don't need all the praise on that. I want to win and I know how to win. And that's trusting Azzi and Sarah, and did that, trusting KK. KK came in there. Like, she didn't play like crazy minutes or anything, but the minute she was in there, it's always energy. It's always hustle plays. And I think that was also another thing that set UConn apart from South Carolina. Like, they were on the floor. Like, they were, they were tying balls up. I'm not going to say that South Carolina didn't, but it just looked like UConn wanted it more, and you could see that fight in that game in those moments. They're getting in the paint and they're converting layups. Like, and that's one thing you can say that South Carolina didn't do. I was honestly surprised that we didn't see more of Tessa Johnson this game, because I felt like she was kind of like one of the only people who kind of had the offense going. Not every single time she was on the floor, she was like, oh, it's not like, I'm not saying she was like on fire or anything, but throughout the entirety of the game, it just felt like South Carolina didn't have an answer to anything that UConn was throwing at them. And I don't even think that UConn was doing anything crazy. I think they were playing the exact same game that they had been playing. Like, we're picking you up full court and we're sharing the ball. There were some moments where, you know, they turned the ball over here and there, but Azzi's defense, there was no answer for that. And a lot of times Azzi's defense led to her offense. You know, it was just like little things like that. It's you know, Ice Brady getting out there when Jana was in foul trouble, and them showing up for that. It was the small ball lineup, like threes not falling. Ashlyn Shade hits a three. It's the possession where it's those back-to-back possessions where Azzi hit a three and they went up the floor, came back down. Sarah hit a three, went up the floor, came back. Paige is going to the free throw line. Like, it's just like things like that, just like those perfect sequences and just that constant trust in each other. And I think it was just their night for things to go well. I don't remember exactly when the timeout was. I think it was like a little before halftime, but South Carolina started, you know, making some shots back to back. You know, they were stopping UConn a little bit. And at that point, it was like you kind of feel the momentum kind of changing. And then Geno had called that timeout and immediately like cut that momentum. And if there was like a pivotal moment in the game, it was that one. Had he let that play out and let them go on that run before, I definitely think we may be having a very different conversation right now. And I think that's just one of those things that comes down to, like, you know, yes, players going out there and executing the game plan, but it also comes down to, you know, great decision making as a coach. And to me, like, it was just UConn had a combination of both of those things. I've never really seen Dawn like that before. Like, usually, you know, throughout the game, she's gonna like stay up, like she's walking around on the court, like, you know, she's kind of like talking she's talking to the players and everything. And low-key, when she sat down, I was kind of like, dang, like she knows, like she knows. And you could already kind of feel it, but like, it was like, she knows for sure right now. Cause it was like, a lot of people did bring this up, or not even a lot of people. Some people brought up the point that, you know, Dawn was crashing out on the sidelines, but it was because she knows that they're better than that. And there were some people who were a little bit more critical, I saw on TikTok and Twitter here and there. And they were kind of like, you know, I think that there was the talent discrepancy. Like, you know, I think that Dawn's done everything that she could with that roster. And I'm not going to go that far and say that. I do think that, like, sometimes, like, your shots just don't fall. I didn't really love any of the looks that South Carolina got. I don't think that they got a lot of clean looks. I don't think that UConn allowed them to get good looks. And, you know, you can say that a little bit about UConn, but I felt like UConn got some really good looks throughout the game. And again, that's a testament to the ball movement, to the transition offense, to playing great defense, not letting them feel comfortable at all. Raven Johnson, to me, was kind of one of the only players next to Tessa Johnson who doesn't have like a crazy stat line or anything. But again, I was so confused about why we didn't see more of Tessa. I felt like Chloe Kitts she has flashes of, like, you know, greatness. And I think a lot of the players on South Carolina have flashes of greatness, like Bree Hall, Sanaya Fagan, Joyce Edwards had a really great game previously. I felt like I was confused. Joyce wasn't really getting a lot of touches this game. Again, I thought we were going to see more Tessa Johnson. Tahina Pow, I felt like I was confused. We didn't see her more. I don't know. I think the way that South Carolina plays is very different. It's very team-oriented. Whereas UConn, it was kind of like Geno had his set people that he was going to be playing in that rotation. And, you know, he didn't go too deep into the bench. And I think that with South Carolina, there were kind of moments for me where I was kind of like, I know that this is how they play, that, you know, not necessarily everybody's playing 30 minutes, but I felt like, to me, like, it was really hard for them to even get anything going offensively because they were getting taken out of the game. And to a certain extent, like, that's how I felt with Malaysia. Like, I understood that she had turned the ball over one time, and then that time she got pulled, and then I think she turned the ball over again maybe, and she got pulled again. And it's just like, it is tough to get something going when you're getting pulled from the game, and then, you know, not really allowing some players to really have time to settle into the game. I don't know. It was interesting. It was interesting, but there's no doubt in my mind that I think South Carolina will be back there. I definitely don't think this is not the end of that legacy. I think Dawn is a great coach. I just think that it wasn't their night. Like, shots weren't falling even when they were getting some off. Back to Raven Johnson, though. I felt like she was the only player who really showed up to play. You know, she was out there playing defense, and she's a great facilitator. She was on the boards, but she was trying to get in the paint, and the layups just weren't going. And you can say that about a lot of people. Like, Chloe Kitts, her shots weren't going. Joyce Edwards had a really good hook shot at one point, and then I never really saw her really get a good touch after that. I think UConn's defense just did a really great job of disrupting anything that they had going. And that's just what it came down to. Again, I can't sing enough praises about KK Arnold. I think she's going to be a great player to watch over the next few years. Sarah Strong, obviously. This is just the beginning for her. And then, you know, Azzi's coming back next year, so that's exciting. Can't wait to see it. And I'm happy that Paige was able to get this championship. It's going to be really interesting. And I think the conversations that we have in the WNBA world are going to be interesting. I'm kind of going to hate the media pushes that are made, but it's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to be super fun as a fan to, you know, watch Paige and Angel and Caitlin and Cameron and Rakia Jackson, and to see some other players, you know, join the WNBA and see how they're able to fare in all of this. You know, hopefully Georgia Amor gets drafted and Haley Van Lith. It's going to be interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens. I know that a lot of people, you know, I know Olivia Miles is staying, and I know that Azzi is staying, and there are a couple people, there's a lot of people in the transfer portal, and I don't know anything about that. But I had a couple people ask me, you know, what my opinion was about Olivia Miles deciding to stay, and I ended up relating that back to Azzi because I know that that's a conversation I've been having on the internet. You know, I get it. People want Azzi to leave, that there's no reason to stay. They're kind of like, oh, like, you've been hurt before, all of these things. But I understand her staying, and I don't think that decision has to make sense to anybody but them, and that's just really what it comes down to for me. I think Azzi hasn't had the opportunity to really just go out there and play a good season of basketball, and now she's going to get that opportunity to do that. You know, hopefully, I'm praying, you know, she stays healthy and everything, and she's able to do that. And I think she deserves that opportunity. And she also deserves the opportunity to just, like, you know, show people that, yeah, I can hoop on my own, like, you know. And I think it's exciting. I think she's going to be a high draft pick regardless. I think she's going to be staying in the WNBA regardless. Like, talent-wise, it's never been a question that she will be in the WNBA and she will be a pro. You know, she's just not ready to do that yet, and there's no problem with that. And then there's Olivia Miles, who a lot of people were expecting to go into the draft this year. And again, I'm not too into draft picks, all the things. Like, I know Paige is going 1, and then I know a lot of people are thinking Dominique Malonga is going 2, and then, you know, Sonia Citron and all of these things. And I don't really know too much about that. I just watch the people play, and then I go about my day. But, you know, I do hope that teams, you know, make the decisions that they need. Like, there were some things that some teams need in particular, and I hope that they get what they need. And I'm talking about Seattle. Y'all need some offensive help right now. You do. You need some offensive help. You need a player who can play defense, obviously, yes, but you need offense. Bad. You need that bad. But I think it's going to be interesting. And then I think some people were asking me about Olivia Miles and my thoughts on her staying. And Again, I think it's the same way with AZ. Like, that doesn't need to make sense to me. You know, it doesn't have to make sense to anybody. It just needs to make sense to you. I think at the end of the day, both of them will be happier that they stayed instead of regretting that they didn't. And I hope that both of them have like really healthy seasons next season, because, you know, you always want the best for players and for that level of competition. But when somebody had asked me that, I immediately went to Google and I was kind of like, I wonder what she had said about it previously. And ESPN had a lovely article. And I believe after they lost the game versus TCU, she had said, it just changes every day. I love college. I think I've outgrown it a little bit, though, so that makes my decision tougher to stay. It's comfortable, a place where you have security, and then I think she went on to say some other things, but to me, at the beginning there, it just changes every day. It's comfortable. It makes sense that she stayed. And honestly, like, even before it was announced that she was going into the transfer portal and that she was going to be staying, like, she kind of told everybody in my mind, like, exactly what she wanted to do. Because in my head, like, if my mind is flip-flopping every single day, but I have something where I feel comfortable and I have some level of stability, I'm probably going to choose that if I'm not 100% sure about like the other option. And so to me, that made a lot of sense. Like, once I read that quote, I didn't really have any other thoughts in my mind about it. I was like, that absolutely makes sense. She basically told us everything we needed to know right after that game. And I'm happy for her, honestly. And I hope that, you know, she gets to go to a program and she finds what she's looking for there. And, you know, maybe she goes and makes a push towards a championship next year. Or maybe she just develops more. And, you know, I hope that works out for her. I hope that works out for AZ, for anybody who had the opportunity to leave or stay. I hope if they decide to stay, that works out for them. I hope if they decide to go, that works out for them as well. But it's going to be a very interesting season for them. And yeah, lastly, I am going to talk about Golden State, the Golden State Warriors. Right now, I'm really happy because first of all, I'm just a Golden State Warriors fan down. It's not even that I'm a Golden State fan per se. I'm just a big Steph Curry fan. And like, watching him play basketball, I just feel like, and this is going to sound crazy. I know I sound crazy. I feel lucky to watch him play basketball every single game that I watch. And he's just one of those players that just so magnetic, and he's somebody who plays with that level of joy that I talked about earlier that UConn and South Carolina were playing with in their Final Four. And again, like, just seeing somebody kind of just enjoying what they're doing, it's always going to make me extremely happy. So watching Golden State play because of him and that joy that he plays with, you know, it's that energy that they have, that synergy that he has with his team, that chemistry he has with his team. You know, it makes wanting them or rooting for them like even more fun. And so this year, even since the beginning, you know, they've had some roster changes. There was a point when the team just was sorry as hell, just ass. And then, like I said, you know, earlier, maybe, I don't even know if that made it in this version of the episode, but they got a trade with Jimmy Butler and they had to give up, you know, a piece, but they definitely look a lot better with Jimmy Butler playing. And I think that Golden State has a really great chance of winning a chip because I think Steph is just really still hungry for one. And I think that everything is kind of falling into place when it comes to Moses Moody and Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga taking those leaps and playing amazing. Like, Brandon Podziemski playing at the level that he is for, you know, a sophomore is crazy. Like, he's doing amazing. For his second year, like, he's doing great. And then I think also even like pieces off the bench like Guy Santos, energy pieces, defensive players like Gary Payton II, all of them playing well is going to be very pivotal to this. And I think that Jimmy is just the piece that they had been missing all season, because like there was a continuity issue with like the team off the bench and then in the starters. So, and even just like their center at the beginning of the year, they were definitely playing Trace Jackson Davis a lot, and now they're kind of leaning more on Quentin Post, who can stretch the floor a little bit better. And then they're also going back to Looney, in matchups where Quentin Post is a great center and a great, can stretch the floor very well and is a good passer, but at the end of the day, he is still like a rookie, and so sometimes you do need more of a like skilled center. So, having Kevon Looney there playing the 5, or even having Draymond playing the 5, are things that make sense in certain matchups. So even just them being able to go to different guys in those moments is something that I don't think you could do at the beginning of the season. And even last season, they were low-key ass. I supported them through it all, but that team was very not good. And yeah, I think it's just exciting that I have something to root for finally with this team. I also think that they definitely have a better chance of winning a championship because I think Jimmy Butler is very hungry for it. Obviously, they're still doing their best to play the right way. They lost to the Rockets the other night, and that was unfortunate, but they just beat Denver and they beat the Lakers the night before, so I'm not mad at it. I am a little bit nervous, but I just have like so much faith in this team, and I just believe they can win. I just do. I don't know why. I always hopelessly believe that they can, just because I'm never ever going to count Steph Curry out of anything. And it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a tough road. I'm not even going to sit here and pretend it's going to be a tough road, but I think the energy that I feel from this team now is very reminiscent of the 2022 championship. So I'm hoping that the right vibes are out there in the universe. And then lastly, like I was saying, I think Jimmy Butler really needs this. Like, Jimmy Butler wants a chip, and I think that this is his last chance and his last opportunity to win one, and I think that he knows that. And so in my mind, him knowing that, and Steph being hungry for one, and Draymond playing amazing defense, being in the defensive player of the year conversation, I think, and even like I said, like Moses Moody taking the leaps that he has and playing great defense on some of the best players in the league, Jonathan Kuminga coming back from injury, Gary Payton, kind of being able to get his offense going, and Brandon Podziemski having the season that he's been having since, he was out for that injury. To me, it feels like all the pieces are falling together for a championship. I don't want to get too excited, but I do have a lot of faith in this team, and I think that they have the potential to do it. There is a lot of work to be done. There's a couple more games left in the season, and, there's still the playoffs, and there are a lot of teams that are ahead of them, but I think that their experience, and I think that they just have the talent and the will to win, and I'm going to bet on that every single time. So fingers crossed for Golden State. As for the WNBA, the New York Liberty, I don't even remember if I talked about it. They got Maureen Johannes, and I'm going to be honest with you. The Liberty are probably repeating at this point. It's disgusting and disturbing. I'm not going to count my links out, though. I think that Bridget Carlton had a really great game in the Euro League the other day. And I think that Nafisa Collier is on a different level. I'm so nervous. Oh, my goodness. I really want them to win it, but it just has to fall into place. It has to fall into place on its own. And they have some tough competition. My goodness. They have that New York team, and then they have the Fever and the Storm and the Dream and the Aces, and I'm nervous. But I believe in the Lynx. I believe in them, and I just have to cross my fingers and toes and everything on my body. But that is it for this week's episode. I might be back next week. I might not. Who really knows? We play it by ear. I'm going to be here for the WNBA season. Know that. But leading up to it, I don't really know. So I'm going to get back to you on that. If you want to follow me, rate the podcast, get in the comments, share with your friends. All the social media is linked down below in the link tree. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of the things. So go check that out if you're interested. I'm trying to think if there are other things. No, there's doesn't really seem to be anything else. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Well, not even weekend. It's not even, it's Tuesday. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.